Before I get into the introduction, I want to get into the pre-introduction, if that's okay. Just get myself organized here. Is everybody seeing my screen okay?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, guys. Planning your research career. Before I get into the introduction, I'm going to get into the pre-introduction. And that is because we don't always read our emails before we come into these training programs. So for those of you who didn't read your email beforehand, there is some work required, very small amount of work required for you to participate in this program. If you go onto the My IDP website, you can see it here on the screen. There's some short questionnaires on values, interests, and skills. We will be doing the values questionnaire before the first break. So if you haven't registered on the website and complete that values questionnaire now, you will need it. You're also going to need later on the personality test. You were sent all of those links in an email by Svetlana, but perhaps maybe the personality test and the others you can do during the breaks or at lunchtime. But we're going to be working with the values one first, so you'll need that done. The second thing that I want to say is I realize that for practically all of you, English is a second language. So I'm deeply appreciative for those of you who have bothered to learn English so we can participate in this. And because we're going to be talking about a lot of complicated topics, you know, you'll probably hear a lot of English words that you may not have used before. So please, 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 guys, ask questions. There's no such thing as a bad question. There's no such thing as a silly question. The only stupid question is the question that you don't ask. So please get into that straight away. So for those of you who are late to the party, you need to get onto the IDP online tool website. And the last thing I want to say is that all of the people here at this training, you are a self-selecting group. You have chosen to be here. In terms of the greater population, you are in the top percentile of education. You have developed yourself into a very effective tool through education. And I'm going to show you lots of facts and figures as to why we're doing this. But the bottom line is, if you can have somebody with your education and your capabilities, and then you can find the best situation for you to display those capabilities and show what you're capable of, this is what this course is all about, to find the right role, the right job, the right situation for you where you can achieve your capabilities and, you know, go as far as you can with your career skills. So this is what this is all about. So now that the pre-introduction is over, we'll get in briefly now to the introduction. Well, that's if PowerPoint doesn't want to play with us. So we'll get into the how and why first, all right? How this approach we're taking is based on career coaching methodology. It's determined by the end purpose of enabling you to make rational, informed, and appropriate career-related decisions. We're going to be looking at the VIPs, PS, the values, the interests, the personality, and most importantly for you guys, you researchers, skills. Those of you who would have done the last virtual seminar with me on CV and interview skills will know how important your research skills are when it comes to positioning yourself for your career. So we want you to rate so you can identify what you want to do professionally, what will work for you. No framework could exist. No framework is possible that would encompass all of the various types of research, careers, and discipline. So by necessity, our approach is self-directed career development. And it just so happens that self-directed career development is in fact the most effective approach to take in producing the results that we want. So Trends that are going to shape the economy over the next decade are growing rewards from innovation. And when the European Union thinks about innovation, they think about researchers. As the pace of technological change increases and countries move into higher value activities, the importance of higher skill levels, like the skill levels that you guys possess, will become increasingly valuable. The European Commission has identified the need to increase the number of researchers that will start at least 1 million new research jobs if the research and development targets of the European research area of 3% is to be reached. Okay, so over the next few years, there's going to be greater need and greater demand for researchers with the required skills and researchers who are able to plan out and make the most of the opportunities that are available to them. In terms of the European Commission, you guys are thought of as human capital, and you're inside the researcher pipeline. And I just want to give you some context here and have a look at the research pipeline here. You've got this on the left here, you've got 53% and 47% next 100, as you know. These are all the researchers coming, or the PhDs coming into research careers. Very quickly, 53% of them are moving off into careers outside science. But what you really want to look at is, obviously, a lot of them get research jobs. But if you look in the bottom right here, less than 1 out of every 200 researchers will actually become a professor and have a long-term academic career. So the first thing that we want to talk about is, if you're thinking about having an academic career, you need to be really focused and you need to be really good. Given the small number of researchers that actually go on to become professors, it's probably a good idea to have a backup plan too. Now, one of our colleagues at Vitae does take some issue with this particular slide. She thinks that of the 53% who are moving outside of science, that a lot of them still do work in research areas. But the point is, from the time people use their PhD to go into research careers, we can see we're losing a lot of researchers before they get in fully into their stride in their career. And there's many reasons for this. One of them is, a lot of people enter third level education and they don't actually have a plan to do it. First of all, somebody suggests that maybe they'll do a master's, and then, well, I've done a master's, I might as well do the PhD too. A lot of people take PhDs without actually figuring out what they're going to do with them. So that's what we want to address now. What we want to help you to do is to understand yourself better. Understand what working environments are most effective for you, what roles are best for you, what surroundings are best for you. It's important that you recognize and utilize all of the resources available to you. While you are inside that research pipeline, the European Commission is prepared to offer you all kinds of support and all kinds of backup in order for you to succeed. We want to help you identify what you want to make you successful and assist you in finding satisfying work opportunities so that you can make rational, informed, and appropriate decisions. Make plans based on clear goals that you have drawn up yourself, and then take action to get what you want. We want to help you solve career-related problems and difficulties. For example, one of the early organizations that were very proactive in research or career development is Imperial College in London. If you could imagine getting your first research contract, or let's say you get a 3-year contract and you fly to London and you're going to Imperial College, I have to admit you would feel very happy arriving in London, excited about what is available for you. However, the very first week you're going to be called into the research office and the career development lady is going to say to you, great, you've got your 3-year contract here now at Imperial College. What are you going to do next? Because you need to be thinking about that next contract now, because those 3 years will go by very quickly. We want you to process and address issues such as coping with end of contract situations like I've just spoken about, work stress, recognize what areas cause you undue stress so you can avoid them if possible, managing relationships at work, how you work with other people, and your work-life balance, which is becoming increasingly important for more people. And as your private life circumstances change over time, you have a family, you move on, your work-life balance, the requirements in that area will become more important for you. And lastly, we want you to become skillful in how you manage your career and working life into the future. As I said, we're going to do the VIPS: values, interest, personality, and skills. The first three, the values, the interest, and the personality, will point you in the right direction. You're going to get lots of indicators from these exercises as to what type of career will suit you. But your skills as a researcher will determine, they will get you the job interview. They will get your foot inside the door. So we're going to look at the sequential steps, what we're going to do today. We're going to start with where am I now? Just look at your present situation. Then self-assessment questionnaires, and I will help you then to interpret the results that you got from the values, the interest, the personality, and then we'll talk about the all-important topic of skills. We'll do self-assessment interpretation. Once you've done that, then you can start looking at some possible career exploration for yourself based on the output of the questionnaires. And then we'll talk about how you reality test your plan and, how you seek relevant training to fulfill your plan going on from there. What we'll do is we will take the first break probably about 11:15, which is approximately 1 hour from now. That will be 30 minutes, and then we'll continue on until 1 o'clock. We will have lunch then at 1 o'clock for 1 hour, and then we'll come back at 2 o'clock and continue. We'll decide what we'll do after that, because as I say, based on the type of workshop that we have today, you guys should have lots of questions based on your own personal experiences and requirements and what you're getting from the self-assessment. So if necessary, there might be a second. If a lot of you have questions, I'm willing to hang around and stay with you after we finish the first session in the afternoon to help answer your questions. But please get yourself involved. This workshop is normally fantastic when you have everybody in a group in a room together, because with all of the different exercises, you can get a lot of really positive energy in the room. The one good thing about all of us being isolated like this is when you're doing the exercises, you're going to be writing down some very personal thoughts that probably would be very private to you. So you may not want to share them with anyone else. So in that regard, you're going to have lots of privacy. So the tools that we're going to use, we have the Career Development Toolkit for Researchers, which we sent to you previously. The Science Careers website, which I've already spoken about. We have the Psych Central website, which is what we're going to do the personality test on. We have the National Postdoctoral Association website, which I will be showing you that later during the exercises when we do the skills audit. We have an e-booklet which would have been sent to you already, 10 career paths for PhDs. We'll speak about that later. There's a couple of Euraxis websites, Discover Careers Beyond Academia and Interact Academia Reaching Out to Business, which will be very helpful for you in the careers exploration phase. And then we have the 5-minute career action plan, which would have been sent to you last week also, or earlier on this week, excuse me. And I'll mention that as well. The training should end. Today's training should end with you prepared and ready to begin a personal action plan that is based on clear, sequential, and complementary goals. This will allow you to engage in career decision-making process, find satisfying and fulfilling work-related opportunities. We want to motivate you to reach your full potential. So there's certain assumptions in this process. The first one is that people have the ability and freedom to make career choices. People can now work in 3 or 4 different careers across their whole working life, which is very unusual compared to previous decades. But technology changes, your circumstance changes. So be prepared to be flexible, and we'll talk about that when we get to transferable skills later on today. And for that reason, career decision-making is not something that this is not just going to be the first and only time you'll do this. You will sit down from time to time during your career and think about, where do I go from here? What are my options? How do I go forward? The reasons why individuals enter particular occupations can sometimes make you smile. For example, the European Union did some research a few years ago, And they discovered that the vast majority of people who work in airports within the European Union work in the airport simply because they live right beside it. We all fall into jobs. Maybe a friend recommended us for a job, or we knew somebody already there. A lot of us tend to just fall from one contract or one role into another. We want to stop that kind of process and begin a process where you are being proactive. You're planning what you're going to do, where you're going to be working 2, 3, 5 years from now. And that's what this exercise is all about. And that is how you can maximize your potential. Do we have any questions on this so far? I can't see anything at the moment because I've got my full screen open. So the first thing we're going to do is, where am I now? You guys would have seen this, would have been sent to you early in the week. And this is going to be our first exercise. If you go, I think it's on page 3 in the manual. I want each of you to answer these questions. They can do it very briefly, but I want you to do it now and save them for me. So the first question is, why did you decide to do a PhD? Now, these may seem like very simple questions, but when we've done all the other exercises today, and then you look back at these questions that you did at the beginning, there may be some surprises for you, and there will definitely be some talking points. So write down the answer to this question. You can do it in the booklet, or you can do it off the side on a piece of paper. Why did you decide to do a PhD? And sometimes make a note of when you decided to do a PhD. At what point? The second question is, what career ideas or plans did you have at the start of your PhD? So once you decided to do the PhD, what were you thinking you were going to do with it? What was your plans and what was your thoughts? Please write down your answer to that question.
Excuse me, can I have a question?
Yes, please.
Okay, hello. I'm Lara. I have a question, Laura, because I think I'm not in the right spot because I actually did not start my PhD yet, and I saw the offer of this this course as I don't know, planning a research career in general, and I did not know that it is designed specifically for after the PhD. Well, I did not understand it correctly, so I'm wondering if I will benefit from being here, or
you will get more benefit from this than anybody else, Lara. Simply because, in my opinion, we should be doing this training when you are at master's level. You should be doing this before you do your PhD, and I think this is the best time for you to do it. So what you need to do, Lara, is you slightly change the wording of those questions. So you're thinking about doing a PhD. So the second question would be, what idea or career plans do you have now that you're thinking about doing a PhD? Just answer the question as it applies to your present circumstances.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. So the next question is, at what point in your PhD did you decide to carry on in academic research, and why? Now, these questions may seem, a little bit, you may be wondering why we're asking these questions, but trust me, at the end of all the exercises and all the work that we're going to do today, these questions, when you go back and look at them, will give you a lot of pause for thought and re-examination of what you're doing. The next question, did anybody influence you to continue on in postdoctoral work? If so, who was influential, and was that influence positive or negative?
May I ask a question?
Of course, Priscilla, please.
Thank you. So these questions need a lot of thought. So I was wondering if we could answer these questions maybe in the break time or during the lunch hour, something like that.
You can do that. Do you have the e-booklet, the actual e-booklet itself, Priscilla?
Yes, I have it in front of me.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yes.
Yeah, well, in a way, I don't want you to think too much about this, simply because we're looking at where you are now. Like, for example, this particular question here, did anybody influence you to continue on a postdoctoral work? That's pretty much a yes or no answer if somebody influenced you. And then the next part of that question is if so, who was influential and what was their influence? Was it positive or negative? Now, that's pretty much a straightforward question. Now, there are questions like time, but you don't really want to spend too much time on this one because all of the real thinking is still ahead of us. So if you can, just put down a short answer for that, and you can come back to it later if you wish.
Okay, thank you so much.
No, thank you. And guys, keep the questions coming because all of this stuff we're going to be doing is about you. I'm a professional career coach. I'm here to help you with these questions. Please take advantage because I'm going to explain later about how you're going to come to points on your journey when you really need professional advice and professional help. So take it every chance you get, okay? The next question is, did you explore other career options? And if you did not, why not? The other problem I have, of course, is if we were all working in a room together, I would be just walking around. I could see everybody working. I don't have that advantage here. I'm sitting looking at a little dot on my computer screen, so I could be completely talking to myself. And because we're doing this, this is almost like radio where it's very difficult to have silence. You can't have dead air. Because in this absence of any visual or audio feedback from you guys, I will keep talking just to fill the space. The last question, from the responses of the questions you have already written, just look over what you've written there now, guys, for the previous, 5 questions. What are your career decision-making strengths and weaknesses? So based on the first 5 questions, have you made any good or bad decisions so far? What is your career decision-making strengths and weaknesses? What are you good at deciding? Like, for example, you might say, well, look, I'm decisive. I decided to do the PhD, so at least I can make my mind up. But someone else might say, yeah, I'm glad I did the PhD, but maybe I could have done a slightly different PhD based on the information that I have now. These are important issues. They don't seem important at the moment, but when you put these 6 questions together with all of the other information that you're going to gather about yourself today, it will be quite useful for you to look at. I see Magda is here. If that's my Magda from Dublin, I say hello. If it's not, I say hello to you too anyway. Yeah, I see somebody else does not have their PhD. Honestly, guys, this is the best possible time for you to do this before you do your PhD. So you will probably get a lot of benefit from this. So with this final question, or are we ready to move on? I will take silence as ready to move on, even though silence usually means a lot of people are working. All you got to do is just say no if you need some more time. We'll move on. So just on the whole where am I now situation, just taking stock before we begin to look forward, just taking stock of your present situation. Does anybody have any questions on that before we move on? Nope. Okay. So the first thing we're going to move into is values, your values. Now, look, I appreciate that in some cultures, in some countries, or even in some families, the whole idea of values and interests is silly nonsense. I know people who would say, listen, all you need to have is a good job with good salary and that you have security of tenure, okay? And I can understand that. There are many people who don't need to feel fulfilled or don't need to feel challenged in their work or in their role every day. They're quite happy to go to work, do their job, pick up their paycheck, and go home. That's fine. If you're that type of personality, that works for you. What we're talking about is finding the perfect situation for each one of you guys where you can outperform everybody else simply because you are working in a role that definitely suits you. So while there's no such thing as the really perfect job, very few people are really happy to go into work every day, but they do exist. So if we aim for the stars, perhaps maybe we'll hit the moon, which is a lot better than having a bad job. Okay? So in terms of values, Edgar Schein developed the concept of career anchors and values. Now, I like this word anchors. For, of course, now, if you're not a native English speaker, an anchor might be a new word for you. An anchor is that big thing that they have on a chain in a boat. They throw over the side of the boat to stop the boat moving. Your anchor keeps you grounded, okay? And that's what your values are. Some of us really value autonomy or independence or security or money. These are things you value in a job, or salary or respect. So if you value these things, you're not going to give them up, even if you're faced with a difficult choice. So, Schein identified the necessity of taking values into account when you're choosing occupations, because if you work in a job that has conflict with your own values, it's likely to lead to conflict and dissatisfaction, and you're probably going to be really unhappy over time. So that's why values are important. And of course, the main thing that we're going to use values for as an indicator that will perhaps suggest some career that is suitable for you when we. Your values are the beliefs, principles, and standards that are important to you and what you are looking for in a job and for your working life. When considering career development opportunities, it is very important to determine if your core values can be satisfied. And so many people do not take this into account when they're looking for jobs. Now, you don't always have the luxury of having two jobs to choose from. So this is why we talk about you plan your career ahead of time and you choose a specific role, you choose a specific company to work for, or you choose a specific sector that you want to work in, and then you start working towards that. So values, the kind of questions you're asking yourself: what matters most to me in a job? What do I value most in a particular role? What do I need to be professionally fulfilled? What are my core values that I, no matter how hard I try, I cannot compromise on? And what type of roles agree or disagree with my values? So while every role involves some degree of sacrifice or compromise, as I said, very few people have the perfect job. What we want within reason is to have a job that is in line with our values, because if it does, it results in greater job satisfaction. I'm going to be happier in my job, and if I'm happier in my job, I'm going to perform better, and I will perform better over a longer period of time. So before we get into the values questionnaire, does anybody have any questions on values before we get into the actual questionnaire itself? Like I said, the more questions, the better. Please speak up. No questions so far? Okay. Right, so let's move in. Now, you've all seen the values career assessment. You know what it looks like. You've done it. You've gone through it. And you would have gotten a printout just like this, okay? So the first thing that you want to do with this, everything in column 1 is unimportant. These are not things you value at all. Column 3, probably not important either. Column 5 is very important. Now, don't be put off by this example. Some people might only have 1 or 2 or 3 items in column 5. These are the essential. According to the questionnaire, these are my essential values. But have a look through column 4 there as well before you make your final decisions. Is there anything in column 4 that you think is important to you and should be in column 5? Make a note of those because they're important. Okay? And make a note, write down on a piece of paper somewhere off to the side those values that you think are important. You don't need to rank them or put number 1 or number 2. Just write down the ones that are to you. We're going to do a lot of this with a lot. Now, you may be suspicious, but I promise you this will make sense and you will see the benefit of it. Trust me for about another 30 minutes and then we'll go from there. Okay, if you finish looking at that now, what we're going to do is you should have written down, you know, the values that resonate the most with you from column 5. Now I want you to choose the top ones. I want you to list them in order of priority, but change the word if you wish. These are your values. You know, at this point in time, that readout that I just showed you, this really, it's only an approximation of what your values are. It's almost has as much relevance to you as would a horoscope in a newspaper. You know, there will come, in this process, you will take ownership of this, but at the moment, they're just a collection of words. So write down your first 3 to 5, put them in order. If you want to change the word, you can even use a word in your own language. You know, if the word does not quite match your values, you know, whether it be loyalty, financial returns, financial compensation, could be security. Choose your values and put them in order of preference. And once you start putting them in order of preference and choosing your own words, this begins the process of you taking ownership. And what I mean by that is you start to feel that this is an accurate description of you. Now, we've a little bit further to go, but for the moment, we'll leave it at that. We'll come back later. We'll get much deeper into it. But for the moment, I want you to list your top 3 to 5 values. If you have more, if you want to list 7, that's 5. That's fine, but put them in order of preference. Do we have any questions on this at the moment, on what we're doing here? Is anybody not clear?
There is no comment in the chat.
Okay. So I can just assume that either everybody is busy because they're still here. That's fine, guys. So for the moment, that's our values. So on a separate piece of paper, away from all of the notes that you've taken, I want you to list those top values that you've prioritized, because we're going to be putting our final interests beside that too. And then we're going to be putting our personality traits, our most common personality traits. We want all of this final information on one piece of paper. And of course, we're going to be putting our motivated skills when we do our skill audit there too. So, you know, you'll have a piece of paper for making notes. Another one where you have the finished lists. So you should have 3 to 5 of your values in order written down on this piece of paper. And if there are no questions on this, does anybody
have a question?
Please proceed. If you need more time, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Sometimes I feel that there are more than 5 values, maybe even 10 values I would have, and they are all equally important to me. So how do I prioritize if I have to narrow it down to just say 5 or at the most 7 values?
Well, first of all, if you have 10, you can list 10 if you wish, but it can be difficult in prioritizing them. So what you're going to have to do is look at them one at a time, and maybe in your own head, or write down a number of 1 to 10, how important they are for you. Because at some point you may be forced to choose. And of course, this is not a final decision. As I will explain later on, this is, you know, if you were to do this 5 years from now, you'll be a slightly different person. Your priorities will have changed, your circumstances will have changed. But at this point in time, Priscilla, if that's what you want to do, try to write a number. If you can't choose between 2, you know, put yourself in a hypothetical situation. Well, if I only had one of these to choose, which one would I choose? Well, you know, this is not the final answer. It's not going to be nailed or painted onto the wall. You know, you just want a rough approximation of your preferences. So don't torture yourself too much over this. Just get roughly some, you know, some order of preference based on the list that you have come up with. Okay. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. Any more questions, guys, before we move on? We will come back to this, I promise you. At the moment, what we're doing is we're gathering information and data, as much information and data as possible about you. And then once we gather it all, We're going to look at it all and see how do we make sense of this and what is it telling us. And to a certain extent, as scientists, this is a process that you should be familiar with. So moving on. We're going to move on to interests. Okay. Interests are really important. They speak a lot to motivation. A detailed analysis of interests as a predictor of job satisfaction and found there's a strong relationship between interests, motivation, and the importance of exploring interests when choosing a career. And the reason for that is there's an overlap between skills and interests. Our people are more likely to invest time and energy in developing skills that interest them. We've always had things that intrigued us. An interest is different to a skill. Onto something, or it excites you, it attracts you, it energizes you, it appeals to you. You may not have even tried it before. You might see something on TV and say, wow, I could do that. That looks really interesting. So being interested in something is not the same as being skilled at it, okay? So what career themes am I attracted to when we're looking at interests? Are my interests social? Are they enterprising? You know, do I want to go into business? If social, do I like to work with people? If my interests are investigative, do I want to do specific research? And then if I do I want to work alone? Do I want to work with others? Do I have a practical focus? Am I creative? Or do I prefer to be systematic in my approach? What gets me out of bed in the morning? And more importantly, why does it get me out of bed? This is what we want to get to the bottom of when we're talking about interest. We want to uncover your motivations. So we want to identify what you love doing, both inside and outside of work, and seek roles that you are passionate about in order to increase your levels of job satisfaction and performance. So before we go into the interest questionnaire, are there any questions on interests? Nope. Okay, so far. Right. Again, you've seen the interest questionnaire. You will have all done it. Again, you'll get a printout like this. In this case, on number 5, there are only 2 top choices. Again, look at number 4 first. Is there anything in number 4 in your printout that perhaps you think is a little underappreciated and should be in number 5? Put it into number 5. Write down those interests that are in number 5 that appeal to you the most. Again, if you want to change the wording, do so. These are your interests. You know better than anybody else. And then once you have done that, I want you to prioritize them. If you can do 3, do 3. If you can do 5, that's even better. List them 1 to 5 in your order of preference. How are we doing out there? Is anybody finding these exercises interesting so far? Or we haven't got to the point yet where it's interesting? Okay, do you need more time, or is everybody finished? Need a little more time with this particular exercise? Okay, no problem. Yeah, we wait we'll give another minute or 2. I don't want to rush you guys. We have lots of time to do what we have to do. So I don't want to rush you. Let's say I give you, let's take 2 or 3 minutes here. In fact, Svetlana, are you there?
Sure, yes.
So Lana, I was just thinking, a lot of the guys are starting to get into these exercises now, and now they know what we're doing. Just in case some people were late coming to the party and they want to catch up, should we take the first break now, maybe for 15 minutes, or should we keep going until 11 o'clock?
It depends on your considering, and as you say, they are let's say at least 2 people that joined a bit later.
Yeah.
So it may be nice to have at least 10 minutes break.
Yeah, we take. Do you want to? Okay, guys, what we'll do is we'll take a 15-minute break, just for people to catch up with where we are, because this is a really effective training workshop when everybody is involved and everybody gets the most benefit from it. So let's take a 15-minute break so you guys can catch up with where we are. And if you're in doubt, just check the email that was sent before the training. Okay, so we'll come back on at 10 o'clock just so everybody can get their values and their interests organized, and then we will be moving on to the personality and skills after that. Thanks a lot, guys.
Wait a second. 10 o'clock, it is your time. And,
oh, excuse me, 11 o'clock, apologies.
Yes, 11 o'clock.
This is a 15-minute break.
Yes, 11 o'clock Central European time, Brussels time. We will be back.
Thank you. Hopefully that answers Tian's question.
I have 2 questions, Dean. May I ask?
Yes, please. Of course, please.
Thank you. So while listing out my interests, you said that we can use our own words. So
Yes.
What I found was certain options were very complementary to each other. So I've clubbed them into sort of one interest. So
Yes.
Is that okay? That's my first question. And second question is whether if I have listed, say, 7 interests, do I need to list them in serial order, or any order is fine?
Well, the first part of your question, yes, it's perfectly permissible. Change the words, use any words that you like, because this is coming from you, and that is what we want. I don't want you to use the words that we give you because they're not your words. So you're taking them and reinterpreting them as you see it. So you're doing exactly the right thing. The second question, if you can, yes, please prioritize them. Sometimes we have difficulty choosing, but that is the whole point of this. It's not absolutely necessary. If you have 3 interests that are equally of importance to you, well, then leave the 3 there. Now, if you have 7 that's equally important to you, well, then we might have a problem, because that forces us to make decisions. But prioritize them as much as you can.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Priscilla.
I have a question when I
Oh,
hello. Yes.
hello, Ivan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I after I do the assessment, I have the warning on the summary that I selected a lot of value as 5. So, but I read it already and I choose the number 5. So, is it any problem when I choose many things at 5 score?
No, sometimes you might only have 1 in column 5. Sometimes you might have 7, like our previous question. We are all different, and that's the whole point here. We want to find what makes each of you unique and different. So, look at number 4. Make sure there's nothing in number 4 that should be in column 5. Perhaps something in number 4 is more important than the algorithm picked up. But ideally, we should have, we want to have at least 3 values, at least 3 interests in order of 1, 2, 3. If you have 5, that's good. If you have 7, that's fine too.
And some point that I feel so I choose number 3.
Well, no, you see, what you need to understand is number 1 is something you have absolutely no interest in. Column number 5 are the things that really interest you, and number 3 is somewhere in the middle. So it's really number 5 and particularly number 4, column number 4 that you're interested in. The others, based on the input that you put into the algorithms, tell us that you have no interest really in columns 1, 2, and 3. It's 4 and 5 that are most important to you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Can I ask something?
Of course, please do.
Okay. Thank you for your opportunity. Okay. I want to introduce myself first. My name is Zulfaningsi. I'm from Indonesia, but now I'm studying in Thailand. I want to ask to you, sir. Now I'm a master's student. So how I can start my career become researcher? Now, like this, sir. Thank you.
Okay, well, how you can start your career as a researcher. Well, this workshop doesn't really encompass that particular question, but and there's an obvious simple question that is it sounds so simple, I'm not going to say it because it might be insulting, but basically this is about you choosing what research career, not if you should do a research career. So what we're looking for here is the best research career for you. Whether or not you should do another research career, perhaps when you finished all of these exercises and you see a possible path, well, maybe that will answer this question for you. I don't know what your personal circumstances are. We know from our work in Euraxis that a whole number of things go into somebody having the ability and the time to do a PhD. You have to have the financial backing, you have to have your visa, you have to have the ability to do it. So we're assuming you have all of those things in place. So what we're trying to discover here is the best research career for you. So for the sake of your question, let's just assume that your question is you are going to do your PhD. So let's now try to find out what is the best PhD research career for you. I'm sorry that doesn't answer your question exactly, but within the context of this training, that is the best answer I can give you. Is that okay?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I'm the younger about the researcher, so I need a suggestion from you.
That's fantastic, because you will get, because you haven't done your PhD yet, you know, the further you go along through the research pipeline, your options become less. You have the most options at the beginning where you are right now. Right now, you have all the options open to you because you haven't even decided what your PhD would be on yet. So at the moment, all possibilities are open to you. Those who have a PhD already will be looking for a career path that will suit the PhD that they currently have. So to a certain extent, you have an advantage in that you have a much wider canvas on which to paint your masterpiece on.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, somebody else has a question. I can hear a voice, a little voice
Hi.
there. Please.
Hi, Dean. I'm Tejaswini. So I had a conflicting issue regarding my interest.
Yes.
Actually, it says in the first 3 columns, it says that, for example, writing grant proposals is not really my thing. While in the 4th and 5th, it says that I have an interest in writing scientific manuscripts. So it's like conflicting. Without a proposal, you can't make a scientific manuscript. So what should I make out of it?
Well, first of all, does that sound accurate? Does that sound like something that interests you?
It kind of does, because in research, those are very different steps, right? So there are some steps that might seem more appealing, while there are other steps that might not really seem that much appealing. I'm from a science background and I have yet to do my PhD. But since I'm still considering, proposal is one of the hurdles that I find before applying to, you know, looking out. So, but then writing scientific manuscripts seems a bit more easy for me. So I was just wondering, how should I proceed with such conflicting, you know, interests?
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a pretty interesting dilemma to have. Well, the first thing is you need to think about, you know, some of this work appeals to you and some of it doesn't, right? So what you need to do is you need to choose a word or a very short sentence that describes the work that, so instead of doing scientific documents, you could write down working on specific type of scientific documents, whatever your area or interest is in. So then, you know, you're being more specific in your choice then, instead of just putting scientific documentation down in general. So, you know, if you can, the more specific you can be with your preferences, the better. So differentiate between the scientific documents that you enjoy working on, or you think you would enjoy working on, and those that don't interest you. So find a word or a phrase that will capture that thought. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions on interests, guys? Again, you know, we've already done this with the values. Choose your top 3 to 5 interests, change any words if you wish, and then list them in order of preference. So, key facilitation points. You want to understand and confirm, more importantly, what your interests are. You obviously came to this workshop with a good idea of what your interests are. Was any of that confirmed here? And, you know, were you able to get a better understanding? And more importantly, understand where your interests are not. You know, things that don't interest you, you want to avoid for obvious reasons that we've already discussed. And can think a little bit about the interaction between interests and skills, because skills that interest us the most, because they interest us, we're going to spend more time on them. We're going to get into motivated skills. And the other thing to think about is when you're thinking about potential roles in the future, how could working in a particular role suit the interests that you've just listed? More importantly, to what extent does your current role, or maybe your last role, or roles that you consider in your future, how do they match your interests? Think about your current position. You know, where do you feel bored? Where do you feel happy? Where do you feel constrained? What roles, are there any roles or jobs being suggested by the interest results that you've written down there now? Make little notes for yourself. You know, little ideas can come into your head. Write them down before the next thing comes in there. You know, most people are going to be a mixture of different interest areas, but there's usually a predominance of 1 or 2 that are very strong. And of course, each description will not reflect you 100%. We have to explore and discuss further, which we will do. So for the moment, we're finished with interests before we move on to personality. Are there any final questions on interests? What we're going to do is, I know the last break was only 15 minutes and it was kind of like a work break. So we will finish the next section, which is personality, and then we will take a 30-minute coffee break. That way you can actually have a cup of coffee, and if there's any catching up to do, or you want to give some further thought to the exercises, you can do it then. So personality. Again, a lot of research done in this area. Tells us interests are a valid predictor when used in career choice, but if you mix that with personality, it becomes an even more powerful predictor. Now, when we're thinking about personality, we're thinking about how you work with others, how you like to work, what kind of working environment suits you. This is what we're trying to dig into here when we get to the personality section. What kind of work do I enjoy? What kind of work do I dislike, more importantly, and why do I dislike it? If you can identify that, that's really helpful. What working environment suits me? Before we get into the questionnaire, are there any questions on personality? Nope, everybody's eager and ready to go. Saving your questions. Let's see what we have here in chat. Is somebody having difficulty with my video or audio? It seems here, Fahimi has said, is it only me, or the video or the speaker is off? Is anybody else having difficulties?
No, sure. I can hear clear.
Okay, okay.
Me too.
So somebody else says, Eva says the video is off.
Me too. There is no problem.
Okay,
Yes,
That's
that's
fine.
right. The video is off. We can't see you, Dean.
oh, you can't see that, you cannot see my screen? You're not sharing the screen?
Yes,
You
we
should
can
be-
see your
We can
screen.
see your
It's
screen.
shared. We don't see your picture. I mean, your camera on.
Okay, can you see me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
My apologies. I didn't
Thank you.
realize, I never realized I was so handsome and the absence of my face would cause such a distraction. But that's good for my confidence. This is fantastic. Actually, now that we mention confidence, confidence is a huge word in this whole process. Confidence comes into everything that we do. And actually, I haven't even mentioned it yet. Before we go on to the personality questionnaire, I want to talk a little bit about confidence because it's vitally important. When I meet somebody who is looking for career development help, if they are in a bit of a funk and they're in a situation where they don't know what to do next and they're thinking about leaving research altogether, invariably they have two problems, and they are confidence and motivation. I say this at nearly every workshop that I give, but it's true, and it is proven time and time again. So the first thing that I try to do when I get somebody involved in this process is to either increase their confidence or increase their motivation. And once those things happen, they will work upward and feed off each other in an upward spiral. And that's why when somebody is in a bad place, their confidence and motivation will work in a downward spiral. Confidence is so important because confidence allows you to try new things, and it allows you to make plans and goals that you wouldn't have thought about doing before. And we will talk about beliefs and confidence later on, because it's a really important point when it comes to do the final planning of your career. If you sense you're not confident in an area, we need to understand why you're not confident, because in many cases, the reasons for the lack of confidence is not based in reality, it's just based in your perception. So sometimes we have to talk about these things, but we will get into that later on. So for the personality questionnaire, now, for those of you who are behavioral scientists or psychology scientists, I apologize. I know this is a very basic personality test. And this personality test is all about how other people see you. But the reason why we use this is there's two reasons. First of all, we don't have a better one, but this one will do just what we need. And the second reason is that before we had these online questionnaires, you would have needed to sit down with somebody like me for hours and hours before we get to the point where we have your top 5 interests and we have your top 5 values. And now we're going to do your top 5 personality traits. Like, this would take hours and hours of conversation. These tests save a lot of time, and they begin the conversation much further down the road. So that's really why we're using them. Okay, so this is the personality test that you would have used, and this is the printout that we get back. So what do we do with this? Now, I know you're all wondering if this is actually my test. Well, I did it, but I did it for a friend, so it's not really me. But what we want to do, you all should have gotten, once you did the personality test, you all should have gotten this printout. So what do we do with this? So what we do is we're looking for the descriptive words, the adjectives. So if you look at this summary here, I'm going to call out the words, and these are the words that I would write down when I'm looking to prioritize. You see fresh, lively, charming, amusing, practical, interesting, well-balanced, kind, considerate, understanding. They're the descriptive words. Nothing else matters. I'm going to just take out those descriptive words and write them down. And that will leave me with a list just like this. So according to them, my personality is fresh, lively, charming, amusing, practical, interesting, well-balanced, kind, considerate, and understanding. That's kind of like a close approximation, but I don't really like that. I want to change that and take ownership of it. So what I do is I'll change the words a little bit to put them what I feel is a little bit more like me. I don't like fresh. I don't even know what fresh means. And at my age, I know I'm not fresh. So instead of fresh, I'm going to choose imaginative, because I think I have a good imagination sometimes. I can come up with solutions to problems. The second one is lively. Again, I'm not really sure what lively means. I will put down friendly. Friendly works for me, and I think I'm a friendly person. Charming is the next word. Well, charming to me sounds a little bit duplicitous or not quite honest. So I'll put down persuasive. Sounds better to me. So far, I'm describing myself as imaginative, friendly, persuasive. The next word is amusing. Let's just say I will choose a sense of humor. I have a sense of humor. The next word is practical. Well, everybody wants to be seen as practical, so I'm going to keep that word. I like to be practical. The next word is interesting. That sounds a little conceited for me. So I'll put curious. I'm always curious about people. I'm always curious about things. Everybody has an interesting story to tell. The next word is well balanced. I would prefer calm. I would consider myself as calm. And then the next words are kind, considerate, and understanding. Well, considerate will suffice for all of those words. So I have taken what they originally gave me and I have changed it to imaginative, friendly, persuasive, sense of humor, practical, curious, calm, and considerate. I feel that is a little bit more descriptive than the first set of words. So now that I've got these words, I want to put them in order, which are the most important to me. So I will say, well, look, practical. Number one, I'm practical. Number two, I'm always curious. Number three, with a sense of humor, and I'm imaginative. So now I have listed what I think are my top 5 personality traits in terms of working. This is what I want you guys to do the same thing. So I want you to go back to here where it gives you your printout, and I want you to take out the adjectives, the descriptive words, and write them down on the list, and then take those words, play around with them, change them, words that you think describe you better. Once you've done that, I want you then to put them in preference, just like this. So maybe I'll give you 5 minutes to complete this exercise. Will that be enough, guys? And if there's any questions in the meantime.
No, sir.
Thank you for the nice words on the test, Priscilla. Yes, Priscilla. After this training, I would love to get your suggestion on the psychology test because I think that we could get a better one than this one. So please, if you have one, let me know. We can talk at the end.
Dean, may I just
please, Priscilla, yeah.
So I have put the link of the test in the chat box for those of our fellow participants who have asked for it.
Great.
And I have personally taken this test and I have referred many people to this test, and they have given me the same feedback that I have, that it's a very intuitive test. And being from the field of psychology, I know that there's a lot of garbage online, but I particularly like this test a lot.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will copy that down and incorporate it into future workshops. I'll obviously check it out. I'm just trying to read some of the notes here while you guys are working. I want to make sure I don't miss anybody's points. I'm assuming, again, because I can't see anything, I'm just assuming everybody is working away here. Another 3 minutes. If you need more time when we get there, I'll give it to you. But otherwise, I have to kind of keep a sense of momentum going, guys, because I'm operating in a vacuum here. I have to say, I might get myself into trouble too, but I have to say that generally speaking, in my experience, that female researchers are far more receptive and open to this type of training. I've found generally that men tend to be a little bit more suspicious until they actually see the proof of how it works. But I find that women are much more open to this and much more engaging, and they give themselves much more freely to this process. I'm sure those of you who work as psychology professionals might have reasons for that. I have my own suspicions, but they're unscientific, so I'll keep them to myself. 1 more minute, guys. If you need more time after that, we'll take it, but just for the moment, it's 1 more minute. Okay, guys, if you need more time, just click on your microphone and say so. Let me know. Otherwise, we'll move on. How are you all doing? Have you managed to prioritize and list your top 3 or 4 personality traits in your opinion? One other thing before we move on, I'll say about personality traits. Obviously, we all have very different personalities, and sometimes personality and skills can be mixed up. What I mean to say is, for researchers, we place a lot of emphasis on your communication skills. Now, we could have 2 very different people with very different personalities. One of them is very outgoing. They like to talk, and they can be very persuasive. They're very articulate. Whereas another person may not be so demonstrative orally, but for example, they might be able to express themselves very well by writing. Okay, so this person here who's a really good talker, that's a personality trait. It's not a skill. So when does it become a skill? It becomes a skill when that person realizes that they have something here. Like, I'm really good at talking. I'm really good at making presentations. How do I get better? Once you start to practice and you try to improve your technique, it stops being a personality trait and it then becomes a skill. So that's how we differentiate in that particular area. So facilitation points. You want your 3 strongest personality traits. Think about how you interact with others. Think about, is there anything in those traits that suggests how you like to work? How do you deal with decision making and deal with stress? How do you feel in stressful situations in work? Are these things that you relish and you enjoy the challenge and you want to be at the center of all the craziness and the madness? Or are these situations that you would like to avoid and you prefer, you know, try to get your work done ahead of time? You don't want too many difficulties. You don't want any last minute surprises. Are there any areas for development in your personality that you think you could improve on? Are there any motivators coming to mind? These are the things you want to think about while we're going through these areas. The other thing is the shadow side of personal characteristics. This is a collection of very well chosen, carefully chosen diplomatic words, but what they really mean is we all have what could be considered bad sides to our personalities. We can be impatient, we can snap at people, but we don't always like to talk about that side of our personality, but we need to be, for example, we need to understand how other people perceive us. If other people perceive us in a negative way, we need to understand why that is. So because it could inhibit us professionally. So we need to be aware of our own personality, aware of our own behavior so that we can adjust that behavior when it is necessary. You know, people rarely change drastically in their personality, but they can stretch themselves and develop. They can become aware of areas that need development and compensate appropriately. So before we move on from personality, does anybody have any questions? Okay, yes, please, Tian.
Yes. If there is some part that I think I want to improve, for example, work under pressure, but I cannot complete at this moment, but I'm still want to improve it. So is it belong to the personality? In the last slide, I see that the reverse slide, is it a question?
Like in the previous slide, this one,
Yeah,
the shadow
previous.
side?
No, the reverse one.
This one?
Yeah. There are some point that we think we want to improve, and
Yeah.
it's not belong to us that at this moment, but we want to improve it. I mean,
yeah. If you're able to identify your voice, I have to say your voice is very gentle, so it's difficult for me to hear it. But I think I heard everything. If your point is that if you recognize something that you would like to improve, or you know, make a note of it, because what we're going to do is when we sit down to do our plan at the end of this, and one of the parts of the plan is you identifying relevant training that you need to upskill in. You know, like when we're going to talk about doing our plan, our career plan, our development plan, we will pick an end point 5 to 7 years from now. Now that end point, it could be you having a specific role. It might be you working for a specific organization, or it might be you living and working in a specific geographic location. It depends on what you want for yourself in the future. But between now and that end point where we're going to be setting into the future, there's going to be lots of steps. Some of them, there may be other roles that you need to get first before you can get that event, that final role. But there will also be training that you will need to satisfy the criteria for getting roles that you have identified. When you put in that point there, when you identify your training needs, because, you know, this is all about that as well. You know, identifying your weaknesses and maximizing your strengths. Does that address your question, Tien?
because sometimes I feel like it's hard to list down here because there's some part I want to improve and it's not my personality yet. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Yes,
well, look, I'll tell you what. Let's wait till when we get to the end. You come back to me again. You know, when we get to the final questions, when we finished everything, and we look at this again, then, because maybe some of those questions will be answered, you know, before we get to the end. If that's okay.
Yeah.
Promise me you'll come back now because I might forget.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's basically it regarding the personality. So before we move on to the skills, and the skills is going to be where you guys are going to have to do a lot of work. But I'll talk you through it, and you believe me, you will get the benefit from it, because we're going to be doing a skills audit, and this skills audit will not just help us in the exercises that we're doing today, but for those of you who were at my last virtual workshop when we did CV and interview skills, this will be this skills list that we're going to do on the skills audit. It will be something that you can use again and again and again into the future, particularly when you're going looking for jobs and applying for jobs. So, you know, it will be useful. All of these things that we're going today. I have a question here. Is it possible to change anything we would like to develop alone? I mean, without a professional coach? Yeah, Magda, I'm going to get to that. There's limitations, obviously, because we're not in a room together and everybody is giving different answers. There's limitations to what we can achieve in terms of each one of you, how far you can go in developing your plan. So when we get to the end, I will talk about what you can do alone and what you will need advice on. And sometimes you don't always need advice from a professional coach. It could be a respected professor, one you will know who will be brutally honest with you. You know, you don't want to be consulting somebody like who's going to tell you everything is fantastic. You want somebody who has experience most of all. And I'll talk about that too. But we will get to that. There will be a certain amount of frustration because I'm going to be able to lead you to a certain point along the path. But then again, once we get to that point, each one of you then I need to work with individually, and we can't possibly do that. But I will take you as far along that path as I can today. And then I will make as many suggestions as I possibly can to help you to go onto the path alone. But bear in mind, we are talking about self-directed career development here. But having said that, there is definitely 2 points in this process where you will need input. If you can't get a coach or you can't get a guidance counselor in your own school or in your own university, you know, maybe you could find a professor or an instructor whose opinion you respect, or it could be a family member or a friend whose opinion you respect, but they must be honest with you and they have to be detached. And really, you don't want them to give you the answers. You want them to ask you questions so the answers come from you. I'll explain that later on too. It's called asking open-ended questions, but we will get into that. Okay, guys, for the moment then, I think this is a good time to take our first break. What do you think, Krasi, before we, or Svetlana and Elena, before we get into the skills, which is probably the biggest chunk of what we're going to do today. So should we take a 30-minute break now? Elena, Svetlana?
Yes, I think it's okay. It's in line with our schedule. So okay. We can take a 30 minutes break.
As always, Elena, thank you for being there. Thank you very much. Guys, we're going to take a break. It's 11:35 now. We will be back at 12:05. Okay, and then we're going to do the skills audit, which for researchers is probably the most important part of this exercise. So at 12:05, we will be back. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, sure.
Okay, guys, we're back on the clock. Hope everybody's back with us. We're going to get into skills now, but before I begin talking about the importance of skills for researchers, the paramount importance for skills for researchers, we will be breaking for lunch at 1 o'clock, which is in 55 minutes. At 1 o'clock, we will be very close to finishing the skills section, and there will be a couple of other smaller items to add on to the end, just to put some icing on the cake, and then we'll talk about where we go from there. But I also want to allow an extra hour after we finish for those of you who want to have quick one-on-one conversations with me. just basically to talk about what has come out of these exercises for you. When we're doing that, if you want to show me, if you can show me, it will obviously be really helpful to me to answer your questions and help guide you. So if you can try to put everything maybe on one document so you can share your screen and show me, that's an option that I want to have available. So when we break for lunch, I will ask you guys how many people are thinking about having it, want to have an extra talk with me after we finish the training. So we'll do a quick head count before we break for lunch. And then we'll divvy up that, we'll divide the hour of time in between the number of people that want to do it. And you can, during the lunch, you can put your questionnaire results and your skills results onto a page. So you can share the screen with me when we're talking, and it can be of more help to you. I did notice one other thing before we continue. One of you guys has been in touch with me via LinkedIn over the last couple of weeks and asked me a question about should you do a second PhD. And as you can see from the response that I gave you, I don't want to mention any names because the person is actually, I'm glad to see, attending the class today. But to answer your question now, when you look at it within the context of what we're doing today, a second PhD is a perfectly good thing to do, but you have to have a reason for it within the plan that you're doing. A second PhD may not be necessary for you, depending on the plan that you've chosen and the path that you've chosen for yourself. And hopefully you'll be one of the people that we can talk with later on. So let's move on to skills now, guys. As I mentioned earlier, in our last in the last virtual seminar that I did on CV and interview skills, we talked about the importance of skills. And when you are applying for a job, when you're applying for funding, these people will not know you and love you the way your family and friends do. To them, you will be nothing but a researcher with a specific set of skills. Your skills are the passport to take you wherever you want to go. How you use those skills and how you complement them with your transferable skills and your communication skills, that will determine how far you get there once you arrive. But it's really important for you to understand your skills. And this skills audit that we're going to do is something that you will use on an ongoing basis, especially if you continue to update it when you finish new training, etc. But we'll start out by saying that there's a strong connection in job performance between interests and skills for reasons that we've already discussed, okay? The skills audit. Now, just get a piece of paper, guys, and just from your memory, without consulting anything else, write down a list of all your skills. They don't have to be research-specific skills. They don't have to be specific skills to your area of expertise. They can be any skill that you would have gained or had time to develop in your lifetime. So they could be skills that are totally unrelated to your job, but write everything down, and there's a reason for that that will explain to you later. Write everything down. Somebody with your education, you should be writing down at least 10 or 12 skills just from memory. And then once you finish that, I will give you some suggestions to help you expand that list, because I promise you, you will have a lot more than 10 skills. Each of you, by the time we're finished, will have at least 20 skills listed. I'm hoping maybe to get up to around the 30 mark for most of you. But it's really important that you understand these skills, write them all down. No skill is unimportant. If you have any questions regarding what is a skill, is this a skill, is that a skill, ask me. That's what I'm here for. Just trust the process and you'll see where we're going as we get to the end of this. But write down as many skills as you can think of. I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that, then I'm going to start making suggestions to you, other things that you can add. So now what you want to do is, if you've written down your list of skills from your memory, take out your CV or open up your CV in your laptop and look at your CV. Now, this is going to take a little bit longer. Every single role or job or pastime that you have has given you skills. Again, write them all down. Write down the skills that you've listed in your CV. Look at every single job that you've ever done on your CV. Like, for example, a common part-time job for a lot of students would be working, for example, in service industries, excuse me, such as waiters. If you're not sure, for example, what skills a waiter has, go on to Google, type in skills of a waiter or skills of a waitress, and you'll get a full list of skills back. Now, there's different restaurants. Some places where you might have worked as a waiter will give you excellent training. Some don't give you any training. So just because there's a long list of the skills that a waiter might have, it doesn't mean you have all of those lists, all of those skills. You will recognize them when you see them and write them down. But look at every single CV that you had. Any CV, any role where you may have been dealing with the public, for example, that suggests that you have communication skills. They're important. Write them down too. Every single skill that you might have had, comprehensive. Leave nothing out. Again, when I'm in the room with you guys, I can see you working and I know how close you are to finishing. I don't have that luxury here, so I need feedback from you in terms of how much time you need and how you're doing. I would imagine that if each of you is consulting your CV, you're going to need at least another 5 minutes from here now. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes and then I'll check to see how you're doing then. Maybe I should have had some background music or something while you're working, but maybe you have your own. If you're not sure if something is actually a skill or not, write it down anyway. We'll sort that out later. It's better to put something in than leave anything out. At this stage, we don't want to exclude or leave out anything. We want to write down every single thing. If you have a driver's license, if you can drive, that's a skill. Write it down. Think about your pastimes. For example, a lot of people like to cook as a pastime. If you like cooking, write that down as a skill. Even though you may never use it in your professional life, we're looking for a comprehensive list. How we doing, guys? Anybody need some more time? Is everybody ready to move on?
Maybe half a minute more, please.
Certainly, Lara. Thank you very much, because as I said, I have no idea how you guys are doing. Yeah, I'll give you another couple of minutes. That's great. Just give me the feedback. Let me know how you're doing. I have no wish to hurry anybody. I want to make sure everyone has enough time that they need. But at the same time, I don't want everybody just sitting there looking at me, waiting for something to happen, because I'm very conscious of us having dead silence here. So I want to try to keep momentum moving along. Do you need some more time? And if you need it, that's no problem. Just tell me. Okay, so having worked on the CV, you've written down as many as possible. So I'm going to make some more suggestions to you now to jog your memory. You know, even part-time employment, you'll invariably find out when we finish this list, you'll have a lot more skills than you previously thought you did. And we never want to be in that situation again. You want to have a full list. So moving on, this is the NPA. This is one of the tools we were talking about. This is core competencies for researchers. So I want to suggest some of these to you, because a lot of times we have skills that we think we've forgotten about. So the first category there is discipline-specific conceptual knowledge. This is specific knowledge within your area of expertise. So I'm going to read these because I'm going to read them fully, because you can work while I'm reading. An overall understanding of the implications of work on broader field, the importance of innovation and creativity, and grasp of cultural, language, and technical discipline specific knowledge. Okay, so do you have any of these skills? Do you have an analytic approach to defining scientific questions? If you do, that's a skill, put it down. Design of scientifically testable hypothesis, is that a skill that you have? Broad-based and cross-disciplinary knowledge acquisition. Interpretation of data, analysis of data, that's two separate skills right there. We go further down to research skill development. Excuse me, ensure that postdocs are adequately equipped to carry out independent research, whether in bench or non-bench related professions. Excuse me. Research techniques, laboratory safety, two very different but specific skills if you have either one of those. Experimental design, is that one of your skills? Data analysis and interpretation, statistical analysis, effective search strategies, principles of peer review process. Are you familiar with those? If you are, that is a skill. What other suggestions do we have for you? Communication skills, really important for a researcher. Postdocs should master communication skills which ensure that messages are heard and understood by the appropriate audience. Writing, scientific publications, grants, applications, career documents. Do you write good letters? Are you able to, explain complicated scientific ideas to a non-scientific audience? Public speaking, making presentations, doing interviews. Teaching is a skill. Do you have teaching experience? And then interpersonal skills, which break down into a whole load of sub-skills. Your style, negotiation, mediation, reviews, feedback, networking, which is the next virtual seminar I'll be doing, conflict resolution, media management, and there are so many aspects to media too. Do you have social media skills? You know, these are all ideas. You know, a lot of the times we have these skills and we don't even realize they're skills. Write them down. These are all important. Another section we can look at is professionalism. Postdocs instill and enforce the virtues of honor, integrity, compassion, cooperation, reliability, and enhance the perception of this work in society. Well, that's a lot for you guys to live up to, but I'm sure you will. So what kind of skills are we talking about here in terms of professionalism? Workplace professionalism, diverse teams, cultural awareness, gender awareness, institutional professionalism, connecting at or across with institutions as employees or representatives. Have you represented your own institution at seminars? Have you represented your own institution going to meet with other institutions? Collegiate professionalism, universal professionalism. Leadership and management skills. Postdocs should understand which leadership styles are appropriate for any given time and situation, increase performance and productivity. Leaders must also be able to competently manage projects, budgets, and staff. Okay, so management skills, research staff management, project management, and as I'll show you in a moment, project management breaks down into a whole other area of sub-skills as well. Data and resource management, that's come up 3 times now. General management, leadership skills, identifying and clarifying goals. You know, a leader has to have a message that is clearly understood by the followers, so you can motivate and inspire, serve as a role model. Responsible conduct of research, again, very important. The pursuit and advancement of knowledge depend on openness, honesty, objectivity, and trust. Therefore, postdocs are responsible for upholding and engaging the ethical norms of their fields. So data ownership and sharing, open science, for example, publication practices and responsible authorship, research with human subjects or animals, identifying and mitigating conflicts of interest. Are you familiar with all those areas? These are all skills. You would have received training in these areas. Again, these are all suggestions for you to add to your list. Now, at this point, your list should probably be almost twice as long as the list where you first wrote down from memory. When you take in the CV and you take in these suggestions, your list probably should be getting near maybe 20 now. And then, of course, we have this. You thought I'd forgotten about this. Do you remember we did the skills assessment also in IDP? And then, of course, when you get your readout. Now, this is slightly different. We don't need to prioritize these. What you're going to do is look at column 4 first. And if there's anything in column 4 that you think you're really good at, and it should be in column 5, put it in there. Then you check column 5, and if you do agree that is indeed any of the lists there, if you think that is also a skill that you have, write it down. Put it down in your list. That list will be getting longer and longer. Then we're going to do some good work with your list of skills. So have a look at your summary from the scientific skills assessment. I'll give you 2 minutes here, guys, and then I'll check in to see if you need some more time. Okay, have you managed to finish that section there, or do you need more time? Everybody's ready to go proceed? Okay. So now that you hang on, someone's got a question here. Everyone's ready. Okay, thank you, Lee. Okay, so what we're going to do now is you're going to divide, you've got a long list of skills now. We're going to divide that list into 4 categories. We're going to choose your motivated skills. Look down your list and find your motivated skills. These are skills that you enjoy using, and you want to use them as much as possible. And you want to find a job or a role where you can use these skills as much as possible because it gives you pleasure to use them and you enjoy using them. The second category is developmental skills. Skills that I would like to develop and use more often. So these are skills, it may be something that you're not necessarily, I'm going to give you a detailed description of each one of these categories in a moment. And then you have burnout skills. These are skills that you don't want to use anymore. Like a burnout skill at one time might have been a motivated skill, but you used it so much, you're sick of doing that, you want to leave it, you don't want to do that anymore. And then lastly are skills that are not considered relevant or important at this time. A classic example of that would be one I gave you earlier, where if you have a driver's license, you can drive, but at this point in time, you don't really see how that's relevant to your career, so it's not considered important. So just to give you a more detailed breakdown of what each of those will. It's going to look like this. You're going to have your motivated skills, then your development skills, your burnout skills, and skills not important, each with its own list right there. Just to give you further explanation, let me see what the chat here says. Yep. Yeah, and then he's ready to go too. So motivated skills are skills you enjoy using and you are good at. This is your preferred skill set, and these are skills that your work role should draw heavily on. These skills should be explored carefully to generate possible role and development ideas. So not only do you want to look for roles that use a lot of these skills, your motivated skills can make suggestions to you over potential roles for the future. And then we have the potential development skills. Skills you enjoy using or think you would enjoy using, but you currently have low skill levels in. These may represent options for training and or development. But once skill level increases, they then may move across to motivated skills. So you may see something that you've never done before, but you think, wow, that looks really interesting. I bet I could do that. I'd like to try it. That's a potential development skill for you. And these are the type of things that you keep looking out for when you're looking for training in the future that will fit in with your career and development plan. The next section is your burnout skills. These are skills you are quite competent in, but do not enjoy very much. You may have fallen into a situation of being asked to do these skills or use these skills because you are good at them, but you get no enjoyment from it, and it can become a source of stress and frustration. Ideally, work roles should not involve these skills more than 20% of the time at a maximum in an ideal situation. If it's a burnout skill, you probably want to use it 0% of the time, but 20% of the time should be your limit. And then lastly, we come, as I said, to the not important skills. Skills that I neither like using or have any competence in. Realistic work roles are unlikely to involve any of these skills. You do not need to spend a lot of time in this area, but they should be noted for possible future use. So there you go. This is what your skills diagram should look like. When, apart from, obviously, you're going to populate it with your own list. And obviously, the motivated skills are what we're going to concentrate on going forward from here. But all of these other skills are important too, because as I've said before, if you're looking for you may have targeted a specific organization or institution that you want to work for. They may have requirements for specific skills that you don't have. But if you go check all of your skills list, you may have something that is close. So perhaps you might get a job interview based on that. So you always want to know, and you always need to, like in our last virtual seminar, when we were talking about understanding what employers are looking for, understanding the skills that they require from you when you're reading the job advertisement. This is why you have your skills list, so you can go back and compare your skills list with the skills required by the organization or company that you've targeted. I'll give you 1 more minute on this. Priscilla, do you have a question?
Yes, Dean, thank you. I was just wondering that how can any skill not be important? Because we tend to use our skills in a broad-based manner. And so any skill would be useful at some point in time. So I was just wondering what I should put in that quadrant of skills not important.
I agree 100% with you. Every skill is important. That's why I ask you to write every single one of them down. But when it comes to skills not important, the important aspect, the emphasis is skills not important at this time. And, you know, the example I gave you was a driver's license. You know, for some jobs, most jobs, it's not required to have a driver's license. But there may be one role where a lot of driving is required. So then, well, it's not important at this time. You have a skill, so you're going to put it down. But that skill might become important in the future. And if you have any skills that you consider not to be important at this time, if you don't have any, don't put anything in there. If you think the other skills, all the skills you have fit into the other 3 categories, you don't need to populate all 4. Just work according to your preferences, because this is all about you and what you prefer.
Thank you.
Thank you. 30 seconds, guys, and then I'll check in with you again, see how you're doing. Okay, have you finished this section? Are you ready to move on, or does anybody need some more time? I know you've got quite a long list now probably to work through there. Are we ready to move on, or is more time required? Okay, Lee's done. Lee's ahead of the game every time. Okay, Lee. Right, guys, we'll move on. So any questions on this? No questions on skills so far?
No, sure. From me.
Okay. Another aspect of skills, as I said, your skills are going to be your passport. They're going to take you where you want to go. But your transferable skills or your soft skills will determine how much further you go from there. So while we've made our list of skills, I wanted to just do one more list, and that's your list of transferable skills. Because transferable skills will suggest to you possible career choices or possible career options. Because transferable skills are skills that are learned in one context but are useful for another or maybe several other contexts. They can serve as a bridge from study to work and from one career to another, as they enable the subject and research-related skills to be applied and developed effectively in different work environments. Generic professional competencies that are equally applicable to all professional settings. Okay, so every role involves transferable skills. They are important to look at when considering future roles, even a very different role. If you're thinking about changing career completely, as you list your skills, make a note of your transferable skills. So look over your list again. You don't need to write down a whole new list. If you think one of your lists is a transferable skill, write a big T beside it. No matter what, you know, even if it's listed as a burnout skill or a skill not important or a motivated skill. If it's a transferable skill, and as I said, a transferable skill is a skill that can be used in more than one role. So make a note of your transferable skills, because again, that's they're very strong indicators, and they're also great at making suggestions and giving you options. So go right down through your whole skills list and make a note of your transferable skills. Here's an example of some transferable skills, like we mentioned earlier: communication, oral communication, written communication, visual communication, empathetic communication, which is based on body language, listening, contextualizing your communications approach. That is, do you have the skill to make your message suitable for specific audiences? Phrasing your questions correctly, so you get the information you require. That's a skill. Teamwork skills are transferable. Working well with others. Social and emotional intelligence. I'll be talking a lot about those in my next seminar when we're going to be talking about networking next week. But essentially, social intelligence is, to put it down to basic level, emotional intelligence is your awareness of how other people see you. Whereas social intelligence is your ability to quickly gauge the atmosphere or the temperature in a room and how the people in that room are more likely to react. So emotional intelligence tends to deal with one-on-one, and social intelligence tends to deal with groups. Okay, understanding the needs of others and willing to lend a hand when necessary. Organizational skills are transferable, like meeting deadlines, taking instructions, giving instructions, working efficiently and productively. Leadership is transferable skills, motivating others to achieve an agreed goal. Adaptability, they love people who can multitask now. How do you demonstrate that adaptability? Should I be attracted to or avoid roles that require flexibility? Some people don't want to be doing the same thing all day. They want to have a lot of variety in the course of their working day. Think about how you like to work and how your skills translate to that. Project management breaks down into a whole load of transferable skills. People experience requires management, leadership, knowledge of HR rules and HR laws. Finance, you've had training or experience in finance, budgeting, financial planning, keeping accounts, research, learning about new topics, organization. Risk management is a very important skill as well, but it's also highly transferable. Time management, planning, scheduling, prioritization. We've done some of that already, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're skilled. I've already mentioned communication, problem solving, analysis, negotiation, adaptability. You know, if any of these have come up that you've forgotten about, add them to your skill list and make a note that they're transferable skills. So the bottom line for you guys is every role requires skills and every researcher has skills. So we want to match your specific skill set with a role that you choose for yourself. Every researcher has strengths in certain skill areas, and indeed certain roles suit people with those skill strengths. This is a nice way of saying there's a job out there for everybody. Any questions on transferable skills before we move on, guys? It's an important topic. Any queries, or do you need some more time? No questions on the transferable skills? Okay.
No questions. No questions, sir.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Next one is other thoughts. And these are just last little bits of ideas that we can just throw in, extra ingredients to put into this intoxicating brew of new information that is you. Think about what has worked well for you in the past. Think about achievements that have given you a lot of satisfaction in the past. Now, it can be anything, and you're working alone there, so nobody else needs to see this. But, you know, an achievement that, if you remember, many of you might remember when we were younger, we would have a sports day at school. You know, when you win the race and you're the first person to cross the finish line and your hands are up in the air, that feeling of exaltation. That's what an achievement is. You know, it could be when you got your undergraduate degree, you went up there, all your family was there, everybody was clapping. You felt really fantastic. An achievement for you could have been the first time you rode a bicycle when you were 6 years old. Write down achievements that really meant a lot to you in the past. And the thought behind this exercise is, once you write them down and identify them, then when you're talking with your counselor or your coach, they will say to you, well, how did you feel when you made this achievement? You know, what was it that really made you so proud of this? So then what we're doing is we're trying to replicate that. Well, what tasks in the future or what goals in the future would give you a similar sense of accomplishment? You know, like what you consider to be an achievement, others may not agree, but all that matters is what you think. Another thing to think about is when I'm at my best. Analyze tasks and roles that you've done in the past, ones that provided you with real satisfaction. where you got such satisfaction and you went home at the end of the day feeling that you've done a really good day's work and you have made a positive contribution to the greater good. Identify the key factors that were in that situation that were essential for you to thrive. Was it because of the people you were working with? Was it because of the environment you were working in? Was it because of the specific tasks that you had been given? Was it because a lot of trust had been placed in you and you were able to show that trust was well placed? Think about when you've had really good days of work and all of the dynamics that were in play at the time. Which of those dynamics contributed to you being so successful on that given day or within that period of your professional life? Try to identify what was around you and what it was that contributed to your success. You know, with some people, like I said, the people you're working with can be very important. Sometimes it can be the environment or the atmosphere. Now, the atmosphere is usually a product of the boss's personality. Some bosses, when they come into the room, everybody stops talking and looks down at their desk. Some bosses have a light, communicative atmosphere. Think about what works for you when you're at your best. Do you have any thoughts on that? Write it down. Same with the achievements. You don't need to explain your achievements. Just write down what they were. You know what it meant to you at the time and what a great achievement it was for you. Like looking back now, it may not be a big deal, but we want achievements that meant a lot to you at the time. Lastly, we're just going to do some more things. We want to talk about your future vision, right? In terms of family, do you have any plans for family in the future? Do you plan to have a family? If you do plan to have a family, how big will that family be? You know, your family is going to have a great influence on where you can work, how you can work, if you need to travel, if you can travel. So family is important. You know, what's your future vision regarding family? What's your future vision regarding leisure and work-life balance? When you reach the end of your goal, do you plan on having a certain amount of leisure in your life? Do you have interest outside of work that you would like to pursue? Or are you one of these people that if you can find the perfect job, that is your passion, that is your leisure, you don't really worry too much about it, but write it down. And of course, bear in mind too, that, you know, 5 years from now, your circumstances may have changed drastically. So your priorities will have changed, but we're only talking about at the moment. What about in terms of work? Have you identified a dream job for yourself, or what you think would be a dream job for you at this time? Or maybe a dream company that you would like to work for, or an organization or an institution that you would like to do some research at. If you've identified them, write it down. Next one is financial. Very important. Some people place finance at number one in terms of their values. Some people don't place it at all in terms of values. But you may have a number that you think will be required to provide you with the minimum you require. You know, what is your financial plans? What do you want from your future career? How much financial security do you want? If you have a number in your head, write that number down. Next one is learning. Do you plan on being a lifelong learner outside of, you know, obviously in most fields we have to upskill from time to time because technology changes, information changes. But do you see yourself as being in, you know, just acquiring knowledge for the sake of it? Is that something you want to do in the future? Your vocation, do you have a vocation? A vocation is when you feel that you were born to do something. It is the only suitable job that you can do. And you know that you will not be happy unless you do this. This is your vocation. Do you have something that you want to write in that regarding your future vision? And then we have physical. That's pretty similar to leisure. Do you want to have an active lifestyle in which you maintain physical fitness? Now, if you do that, if you have a job, for example, and you have children, and your job requires that you end up spending 60 hours a week working, and then you have spent time with your children, well, you're not going to have a lot of time for physical activity and staying fit too. These are all the choices and the compromises that we need to make when planning a career. Anything else that you can think of that you want to put down for your future vision before we move on? Any questions on future vision, guys? So what do we have at the end of this self-assessment in terms of, well, we've got where am I now? We wrote down those where am I now questions at the beginning of the career development toolkit. Then we did the values and the interests and the personality. We have those outputs. We have the skills audit, which is the categorized skills list. We now have the transferable skills. You'll also do some work on the career development toolkit. We did achievements when I'm at my best. We did the future vision as well. Now, that's probably more information than you've ever gathered about yourself in any one time, and we've managed to do it in a reasonably short period of time. So now, where do we go from here? Now that you've got all this information about yourself, you know, in terms of if you're going to share your screen with me later, like this is where your values are listed here, your interests are listed in order, in preference, personality, skills. You know, if you can have something like that to show me when we're talking later on, it would make it much easier. You will also have your skills list with the diagram on the motivated skills. So here's some questions for you to ask about all of these indicators. Are there any trends or repetitions in there? Like, is there something, when you look at them all together, is there something jumping out at you? You know, what suggestions are being made to you? There should be, you know, some themes should be coming up to you right now if you're looking at all this in front of you. Is there anything there that surprises you? Like, that's something I'm really interested in. Did you get some results that you weren't expecting? If there is something there that surprised you, how do you intend to follow up? What are you going to do to you know, bring this to a conclusion? Have your career choices up to this point in your life been affirmed or confirmed by the results that you've seen there now today, the work that we've done up to this point? You know, is there anything based on the results that you have that conflicts with the career choices that you've made up until now? Because that's something that we need to examine if that is the case. Based on the indicators here, how do you like to work? Do you like to be work surrounded by people? Do you like to work alone? Do you like to work in an open environment? Do you like to work outdoors? Do you like to work indoors? You know, you should be getting some indication from the exercises that we've done on that. How do you interact with other people? How do you interact with colleagues? What direction do all of these indicators point you in? Are there any roles, or even speaking largely, any sectors that are suggested by your indicators? Try to develop a targeted list of indicators, the ones that really jump out to you and appeal to you. Write them down, make a separate list if you don't think you're getting a lot of suggestions. Any questions on this section here, guys?
I have a question about this kind of putting these things together.
Yes, please, Lee.
Yeah, I think it's really, I found that like when we go through this one by one, it also opens like more doors. Oh, there are also this kind of possibility, like the jobs or like the professions that I never thought about. But if you also combine like, oh yeah, like the skills, interests, values, and future vision that fits everything, then it also kind of narrows down the option, right? You may really like research, but like, for example, like might not like administrative work or the competitiveness or the job insecurity in academia. Then like, is it that later we have to kind of choose it, like, I don't know, prioritize what is more important? Like, even if though I don't like this insecurity, because I like research, I will go for it. Like, or
yeah,
that ideally we could find something that fits everything that we want.
Ideally, that's really what we want to do. For example, just in your question there, you used the word insecurity at least twice, possibly 3 times. So that would suggest to me that in your values, one of the things that's going to be high in your values is security, right? So when you're sitting down, one of the things that you're going to be looking at your eventual goal 5 or 7 years from now is you want the job that will satisfy all of your other criteria, but you also want the job with security too. That's going to be high in your values. You know, and we're going to talk about how we, you know, put all this information together now and how you can progress from here. That's the next thing we're going to talk about.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. So next thing what you have to do now, this is where you need to speak to somebody. Somebody with experience, somebody who's who you know will be honest and when necessary, brutally honest with you. But somebody who is not going to tell you the answers, but is going to take the answers from you. So, you know, seek good advice, go through all of your indicators. If necessary, rethink your priority lists, change the words, change the order, take ownership of your indicators, right? So if basically what will happen is, let me go back here a little bit let's look at the values here, okay? So Lee, if you come in to me and you say to me, I look at your values and your values say to me, okay, you want to be seen and recognized as being an expert in your field. You want variety in your job. You want recognition. You want security, which we've already spoken about, but you also want a little bit of independence too, but you want responsibility and you want to influence other people. This is just your values. But that's what the values say, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are your values. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to challenge you and I'm going to put you in a position where you feel the need to defend it. So I will say, why do you think being recognized as an expert is important to you? And then you will give me the answer. And if you give me a satisfactory answer, I'll say, yeah, okay, well then we both agree now that being expert is important. But if you say something to me like, well, I want to be recognized for being an expert because I want to make lots of money. And I'm going, well, what's more important to you, the money or being an expert? And then you think about it, and then you might say, well, actually, the money is more important to me. And then, okay, well, then number one for you is not going to be being an expert. Number one will be financial security. So I'm challenging you, and you're quite happy to do that. And then once we have gone through that process, you then see this list not as a descriptive list of somebody else, but you see this list as your description of you, that you feel very happy to stand over and argue and defend. So that's what we need to do now. And it's really difficult for you to find the right people to do that with. You know, you could do it with a family member, but so much importance is based on the person that you choose, because, you know, they might look and they go, oh, I know the answers. You need to do this, this, and this. Even if they know the answers and their answers are correct, it does you no favors. The answers must come from you, because that is how you get ownership. So that is why I ask you open-ended questions. So if you come into me, let's look at the interest section. And I say, okay, your interests are, you have a practical focus, you're investigative, and you're also enterprising. So what do you mean by practical focus? You might say, well, I like to be able to use my hands. I don't want to just deal in theory. I want to get my hands dirty. I want to get right in there and see how it works and try everything out. I don't want to be in the lab, or I don't want to be in the office all the time. You know, you have, okay, so then I would say, fine, that's good. So you have a practical focus, but when you say practical focus, that means you want to spend more time outside of the office, more time outside of the lab, outdoors. So are you saying that you would like to work outdoors more, or you just don't want to be in the office more? So then instead of practical focus, you might go practical and variety. Okay, now you haven't used variety before, but now variety is coming to the conversation because you have said it. And this is how little by little you take ownership of it. So like I said, instead of this being a list that is describing somebody else, it's now a list that you feel confident that this list describes you. But you have to sit down with the right person to do it. And hopefully, as I said, when we finish after lunch, if any of you want to sit down with me for a few minutes and we can do this and we can learn from each other. And don't worry about being shy, because a year from now, I'm the lecturer here, and a year from now, you guys won't remember my name. And you certainly won't remember the name of the other people that were participating, because you can't even see their faces. So don't worry about it. We all have a certain degree of anonymity here. So this is basically the next step, is for you to take ownership of them. Like, there's no way, based on what we've done so far, you could feel completely comfortable, because you need to tease these out a little bit more. We've been going through these exercises, but this really what's important, and that's how the process works. You need to sit down with somebody who has experience, and I'll explain the importance of the experience in a moment. So the next thing that we want to look at is we have some tools, extra tools that will help you in this process. you know, exploring your options and exploring, you know, how you feel about these particular things. One of them is the Your Access Career Handbook. This will be sent to you. It's an e-booklet. We will send it to you along with these slides after the training. We also have the No Limits Exploring Careers for Researchers. It's a Your Access website. You know, go in there, play around, see what careers are available for you. You already have, as I said, you've got your indicators now that should be suggesting certain things for you. Below the picture here, I've written down the URL, youraccess.eventtotic.com, Piper's Tool. We also have the 10 career paths for PhDs that was sent to you guys earlier in the week. It's an e-booklet. It will give you some very basic ideas, but it's 10 different sectors, 10 different parts, and then of course there'll be subsections and some subparts within each one of those. But it's a very good introduction to exploring career possibilities, especially for you guys that have not yet done your PhD. You've got wider options at the moment. We also have on the right-hand side here, we have another Your Access website, Discover Careers Beyond Academia. And we also have for more careers exploration, because what you do now when you have this list, you start looking, okay, well, what possible careers are out there based on the suggestions in my questionnaire and my feedback? You know, what kind of options are out there for me? So you do some general looking around based on the feedback from the questionnaires. And then there's some more websites here where you can go. You've got Your Access employment site. You've got an excellent networking tool in ResearchGate. You've got LinkedIn, which I'll also be talking about in the networking seminar next week. Practical advice on job searching and CV building. And then again, another Your Access job platform. You're going to get a lot of information there. You'll get suggestions that maybe you wouldn't have considered before. Okay. So that's really where we are now. So what I want to talk to you about now is, how many of you guys would like to come back after lunch and show me what you have, and maybe we could talk about it? Are any of you interested in doing that? I know some of you will be interested in doing it, but shyness might stop you. I think this is an opportunity you should take up if you can. We will be breaking now for an hour. So would you be willing to come back in an hour and spend some time with me and go over the last few slides? Is anybody interested in doing this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's great. That's one. Anyone else, you know, the rest of you, if you want to see somebody else go first, and maybe you come back later and you can see how they get on, and then we'll do it from there. Yeah, a few people are interested. So look, we're almost at the end of the slides, and then we can get into some of that where I can really help you individually. So let's take a break now. It's 1 o'clock, and we will come back at 2 if that's okay with everybody. Okay.
Okay, it's okay. So exactly at 2 p.m. Central European Time, Brussels time, we will be back for the next part.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Elena. For those of you, it's evening in India, so your lunch hour is a good coffee break for me. Okay, Prasida, thank you. Good to get positive feedback. Just to recap briefly what I spoke about before the break, what we're going to do after we finish with the slides in a few moments, I'm going to spend some time with each one of you that are willing to do it. If you can share with me on your screen your indicators, because it's very important that at this point that you take ownership, you explore, discuss, and take ownership of your indicators, because that then gives you a reasonably solid platform on which you can then start your career exploration phase. Because you've got a pretty good idea of what you're looking for based on the fact that you are now confident that your indicators are a true reflection of your personality, your capabilities, your values, your interests, and your skills. So just to briefly recap, once we get over that stage, which is going to be the next stage that we do after these slides, then you go off and you do your career exploration, looking at possibilities, possible roles, possible jobs. And as I said, we will send you some and make available for you some other tools. This will be sent out to you along with the slides, the Your Access Career Handbook, the No Limits tool, which is on the Your Access website, You can have some fun in that. We also have 10 career paths for PhDs. We have the website Discover Academia Careers Beyond Academia. We have Your Access Interact. We have these other sites here, and you can check the links when you get the slides, and feel free to go crazy. So regarding the job exploration phase, are there any questions on that, guys? Any questions? Nope. Okay, so we'll move on. So now we start brainstorming. You've looked at some possible career paths, you have ideas. So now you start to brainstorm. Don't inhibit your thoughts because you're only thinking about ideas. We can do the reality test yet later. Be outrageous as you want to be. Put down high goals, set a high bar for yourself. For this point in time, at least follow your dreams. This is how you set your goals. You want to set your ultimate goal, whether you pick a time frame in the future, and then we want to populate the space in between your ultimate goal and now, between all of the things that you need to do in order to get there, whether it's extra training, extra qualifications. You might need to have one other job or 2 jobs in order to get necessary experience between then and now. These are all the things you need to factor into your goal setting and your planning. Any questions on goal setting, guys?
No, sure.
Okay, so then we move on. A quote here from Napoleon Hill: a goal is a dream with a deadline. So now we have to start being very, very detailed in our planning. You want to come up with a personalized action plan that covers the immediate, medium, and long-term future. An action plan can be updated every 3 to 5 years, depending on your changing professional, lifestyle, and family circumstances. So this is something you might want to revisit from time to time. And of course, because you have all your information available, you may want, some of those skills at that point that did not seem so important now might seem so important to the future. So this is why you want to keep all of these and do your skills lists and keep them handy, update them when you do training, etc. So then you have to start reality testing your plan. A good way to start is the e-booklet that we sent you earlier on this week, the 5-minute career action plan. Now look, guys, you're not going to do a career action plan in 5 minutes, but there's some very useful little exercises in this booklet that will help you, some great, really good ideas, some very pointed questions that will force you to think and make choices. So we recommend that. Have a good look at it. We also have in the IDP Science Careers, they actually have templates for action plans, and you can put your SMART goals in there, give it a little bit of testing until you finally come up with your plan. Now, once you come up with your plan, it's at that point then you have to come back and seek reassurance, because as you can see, when you come in with your plan, it will look like the top diagram there where everything is plain sailing. You take it into somebody like me and we will see the potential problems and barriers, and we will need to point them out to you in that point. It doesn't mean that I'm smarter than you, it just means I have more experience. And the difference is, and this is why you should seek advice from somebody with experience. Experience teaches us that every action and every decision we make has consequences, even if we don't know what they are. Somebody with experience can point out the consequences of your decisions. And that's what you really need, because this is one of the reasons why we lose a lot of people to research. The first time, they go off and they try to plan their career, and the first time they meet an unforeseen barrier or an unforeseen problem, if it comes at a bad time in their life when lots of other things are going on, at that point they could fall out of research and go take a job somewhere else just for expediency or necessity. We want to avoid that by making our plan as detailed and encompassing, and if possible, try to recognize barriers, try to recognize problems before we come to them. And that's why getting good experienced advice in your career is really important. So you put your test, you test it, give it the SMARTer test. You want to be as specific as possible. Write down every single action, every single step that is going to be in your action plan. Everything should be measurable. How long will it take? How long will each step take? When will everything be achieved? Is it achievable? Is it achievable and realistic? Is there anything in your personal circumstances that will stop you from achieving your goals? Everything must be timed. When you will take each step, how long it will take, etc. Everything must be timed. It's got to be exciting to you as well. It's really got to, if you're motivated to do it, and you know, because it's your plan, it should excite you and it should be relevant to you. And what I mean by relevance is, you know, what sacrifices are you prepared to make in order to get to your end goal? You know, are you aware of all the sacrifices? This is another part of the planning, so that, you know, you have a choice to make those sacrifices right at the beginning, rather than be faced with those choices halfway through completing your plan. This is what you want to avoid. So you want to smarter test, rigorously smarter test your goals and your career plan as detailed as possible. So any questions on setting up your goals and your plan? Nope. Okay.
Sure. I want to ask something.
Yes, please.
Yes. If we already have plan, like me, example like me, I have a plan. After finish a master student, I want to get a scholarship for continue to my study PhD. But something happened. Maybe we find job. We continue with my plan, or how? Somebody something make me confused, because this is important and this is important also, like this. How make our plan continue? That's like this.
Yeah. If I understood your question correctly, you said that you already have a plan, and this is good, and hopefully that the exercises we're doing today will help you, you know, make your plan even better. But are you saying to me now, what happens if you have a plan and you get an option or an opportunity that is way outside your plan and you have to make a decision? Is that what you're asking me?
Just like this.
Yes. Well, you see, this is why we have a plan. Because at a lot of times through your career, you will be forced to make decisions. You might get two separate job offers, or you might be pursuing one job and completely unexpectedly be offered another job. Well, at that point, you look at your plan and you say, okay, which of these opportunities is closer in line to my plan? Is this new opportunity an opportunity that I have considered before? Is this more interesting? Does it satisfy my needs more than my original plan? Now, if you've done your plan to a specific point, and this is a plan that really motivates you and excites you, those questions should be able to answer themselves. You know, like, I don't know what your specific plan is, and I don't know what your other opportunity is, but if you have your plan written out, this needs to be a really good opportunity in order to make you move away from your plan. Or if it's an opportunity that you really like, but you don't want to give up on your plan, is there some way where you can incorporate this opportunity into your plan so then that you adopt your plan? But the good thing about having the plan there is it's always a frame of reference when you need to make a decision. You're not making a decision in a vacuum, because you always have your plan there. And so any decisions that you have to make, you can look at it and say, okay, is it worth it? You know, will this make my plan more achievable, or will it take me away from my plan? Do I still want to follow my plan? So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Nani. So necessary steps. So you need to start thinking about consideration of potential development options. This is another good thing about having a plan, because a lot of times, like, and it may have been the circumstance with this workshop here, you're looking out for things or training opportunities, and sometimes you take a training opportunity because it might be useful or it might be interesting. Once you have your plan, you have all your training and development needs included in that plan. So instead of hopefully looking for something that might be interesting, you are now in a situation where you are purposely seeking specific training for a specific purpose, because you know why you need it. So when you go to the training, you're more involved. You're not going thinking that it might be interesting, maybe I'll stay for 10 minutes and then I'll leave. Every time you do a training, you know this is something that is relevant to you and relevant to your plan, and you will go looking to get the maximum benefit from it. So that's very useful too. And that way you don't waste time taking training courses that you don't need. You know, because, you know, as researchers, your time will be very limited. Your time will be very valuable. You will have a lot of competing demands on your time. So if you can enter your research career with a plan, You will be much more able to manage your time and manage your resources. Beliefs, I mentioned this earlier, and this touches on what we were talking about in confidence. This is really important for you to go back, once you go back the second time that you've developed your plan, to talk about beliefs. You know, you need to identify the kind of beliefs that you have inside you that sometimes you don't even think about, but it's a belief that's embedded inside you and it shapes your decision making. So you need to recognize the disempowering beliefs and take appropriate steps to remove them. I'll give you a classic example. Let's say you're sitting with me and you have a plan to solve your research career. And we identify at some point in your career that you will need to go to seminars and maybe make presentations just to enlarge your network, or there may be people at a seminar that you want to get their attention because you would like to work for their organization. So I say to you, okay, you will need to go make a presentation. Now, you may have a disempowering belief that tells you, oh my God, I couldn't do that. There's too many people, I would be shy. So then the question is, okay, well, it's not a question that you can't do it. You feel that you cannot do it. But, you know, one of the most scary things, most people are afraid of public speaking. So if you think that's a problem, well, then maybe you should take a course or training in public speaking, because then that will then give you the practice and then the confidence to remove that disempowering belief. Because when they have to, everybody can make a presentation. On the other hand, empowering beliefs are things that you want to embrace as long as they're realistic. You know, if you have confidence that you can do something before you've even tried it, that's an empowering belief. To be positive and have self-confidence. So, you know, embrace your empowering beliefs if they're realistic, and explore your disempowering beliefs, because disempowering beliefs are usually 9 times out of 10, they're just a state of mind. They're not actually a physical barrier to you achieving what you want to achieve. You know, especially when it comes to gender, sometimes women, you know, oh, well, you know, in my culture, women can't do that. Well, that's not the case anymore. You can do it. So make sure that you are not inhibited by disempowering beliefs that have no basis in reality. You can create your own reality to a certain extent. So it's important to remember that. You know, if there's areas where you don't have confidence, seek training, and that training will then give you confidence. So what about barriers? Now, barriers are very different from disempowering beliefs. Barriers can be real things. And it's important when you go back the second time to discuss your plan with your counselor that all barriers are recognized. Because again, if you're halfway through your plan and you're at a difficult period in your life with a lot of things going on, if you meet a barrier that you weren't expecting, it could derail your whole career. Like I said, you could fall out and do another job just for the sake of expediency. So you need to recognize all those barriers. Now, those barriers could be financial barriers. They could be family barriers in terms you might have children, so you may not be able to travel. They could be visa barriers in terms of immigration. There are lots of different barriers that come up, but these are physical, real, as opposed to the disempowering beliefs. So when you sit down with your counselor, you need to identify every single barrier, and then you discuss how you overcome those barriers and what are the options or the ways that you can overcome them. And of course, you can start working on how you overcome them before you actually meet them, so that you may not even have to meet them at all. This is why the planning is really important, and this will help you to stay on track and in the career that you have chosen for yourself. Over time, as I said, our circumstances and priority change, and our goals might change also. So you need to look up at this from time to time. So now I think that's as much as I can take you at this point in time, but I'd like now, if we want to do some quick sharing, if you guys want to share what you have. We can all learn from each other. And as I said, it's unlikely many of us will ever meet again. So this is as close to an anonymous setting as we're going to get.